Welcome to Executive Nonprofit Leadership and Board Performance Evaluation and Assessment Tools. This session is part of the DCM Associates Fall 2021 webinar series. So thank you for joining us. Just know that the session is being recorded and we will share that recording with you. So if you need to pop off to attend to whatever is going on in your life, don't worry about it. We'll get all of the information to you. There will also be time for question and answers at the end of the program, and you can send us your questions through the chat room. I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Dennis C. Miller. Dennis is founder and chairman of DCM Associates. He's a nationally known strategic leadership coach and executive search consultant, specializing in the nonprofit sector. He has more than 35 years of experience working with nonprofit boards and chief executives throughout the country. He is a sought-after speaker, retreat facilitator, and author of 4 books on nonprofit leadership, as well as a 5th book, which is his own life story. So I hope you really enjoy gaining the insights that he has to share today. And Dennis, I will let you take over.
Well, thank you for that kind introduction, Michelle. I appreciate that you leaving in that 35 years of experience, and makes me feel younger all the time. I appreciate that. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, that's just a little bit of our team. I'm very proud to be working with all of our colleagues here. Okay. So let me just start off this question here. And it is my absolute intent for this discussion today to be about advocating for evaluation and assessments. We will talk about many of the reports we have, but it's not intended, in spite of what you might, it's not intended as a commercial for DCM. I really believe 100% or 1,000% the value of assessments and evaluation, both of leaders and boards. So the question becomes, does your organization perform any form of annual assessment of leadership and board and how they perform? Does your organization perform any evaluation of the CEO and the board? And there's a difference, which I'll explain, between an assessment and evaluation. And who is the ultimate beneficiary? Anytime you do that, it's those you serve. So mission-driven organizations, the more you assess and evaluate and educate, the better off those you serve will be. I want to start off with that philosophy, that concept. Michelle. There's really 3 major objectives I talk about. I want to talk about the importance of assessments and evaluations. I'm going to talk about tools and surveys to improve your performance. I will certainly talk about ways that we can help. We're going to go through a lot of them here, and I want to, we'll get started here. So what is an assessment? I mean, basically, it's a process of documenting using data to measure knowledge, skills, and attitudes, perceptions, beliefs. An assessment is something you do at a point in time. It's like a balance sheet. It's like, where are you at a point in time? It's gathering information from multiple sources to develop an understanding of where you are at as an organization or leader at a point in time and how people can benefit. It's different from an evaluation, which is the next slide, which is obviously measuring a performance over a period of time. So an assessment is, where are you at today? Where are you operating today? How do you practice your board performance issues? How do you practice? How do you evaluate yourself? A leader, how do you conduct yourself? Evaluation is really evaluating merit, worth, and significance. It's obviously using insight to establish reflection and helping making future change. It's an evaluation process for recognizing how well someone does, performing and identifying needed improvements. Before we move on, I want to just mention this. Assessment is the sole purpose of an assessment is for development. It's not for evaluation. It's not for punishment. It's solely for development, education. I want to make that clear. Okay, next, Mr. Hill. So just quickly to summarize, because we use the terms interchangeably, but assessment is ongoing. You can only ongoing assess yourself, ongoing assess the organization, ongoing assess leadership, ongoing assess the board. evaluation is the thing. You evaluate yourself as a closure period of time. Assessment, obviously, we want to focus on improving learning quality, and evaluation judges the learning level that you're at. Assessment is individualized. Each person is assessed for themselves. Evaluation is applied against usually standards. In many cases, your evaluation as an executive may be based upon predetermined annual goals. And again, as I just indicated here, this is just, if you can leave with this, assessment focuses on development. And we're going to talk about the various tools. It's not focusing on how to punish someone or that kind of thing. And so obviously evaluation highlights areas of improvement. That's if nothing, you get anything out of this webinar discussion today, this is what I want you to get out of. The importance of assessing and evaluating yourself, your organization, etc. Okay, next slide, Michelle. We're going to talk about today about 5 different tools that we have. You know, we're going to send you all this information as well too. So we're going to talk about each one in a second here. And so we can just start, Michelle, with the first one. One of the tools that we created, there's a number, as you know, there's a number of board performance assessment tools out there. The problem is if you're an effective organization, your board and leadership work together as a partner. So if you're just assessing your board and not assessing leadership or having the board assess leadership, vice versa, not individually, as an organization, I think you're losing out on potential growing your partnership here. So we created a tool it's an online tool for executive leadership and board members to assess the organization. Identifies areas of strength as well as areas of need and improvement. It provides recommendations, but more importantly, it's confidential. So when someone does one of our reports, we do not know their names. We only can tell the difference between if you are a member of the board and on the leadership team. And so hypothetically, or not hypothetically, but if you had, 10 board members, we only had 8 reports back, we can only tell we have 8 reports back. And the reason for that is because we don't want anybody to think, well, there's a code there somehow and they're going to find out who I am. So this is the only tool I know of in the country that evaluates both leadership and board's perceptions together. Let's talk about what those areas are, Michelle. Next slide. There are a number of areas here. And again, this information is also on our website, but the first one is certainly how both the board and leadership perceives mission, vision, values, and goals. And that's really important to us here, okay? Really important. In my experience over, 35 years, and maybe add a few here, is most everybody gets mission down quite well. Why you exist, what's your purpose. Vision is not always well defined, and most organizations don't have a clear, compelling vision that's measurable. Sometimes it's extended vision. So we want to get a sense of just how you perceive it at. Talk about strategic goals, or how are goals being perceived, board CEO partnerships, leadership performance, board governance performance, how impactful your programs and services are, how do you measure those, how do you establish a brand identity, and how do you cultivate donors and dollars for philanthropy. And so, but this is the tool that allows everybody to give a perception. So there's a snapshot of how the board and leadership perceives it. And we'll give you an example here for a second. So here's just a summary of many questions you would get here. And we did the best we can to blow this up here, but here's just a sample summary. So if the question is, our organization has an inspirational vision statement that clearly articulates a future direction that is ambitious, realistic, credible, and measurable. You can see here that a large, almost, well, I think it's 40-some% disagree. A few people strongly agree, and other people agree. So that just says something to me that almost, 40% of whether it's leaders or boards don't feel you have that. Same thing down below here, just another example. Our organizational leadership, our board, our programs and service, our brand identity, and philanthropy are all strategically aligned and committed to achieving one goal, the vision. Same thing here, you got a mixed bag here. You got strongly agree and agree, which is good. And I don't differentiate much between strongly agree and agree per se. But again, you've got, a third of it saying I don't agree. So that's an area then that you want to kind of investigate, and we'll get into it. But keep going, Michelle. It's another example to it. So here's just an example. The CEO has demonstrated the skills and competencies of being a visionary thinker, relationship builder, collaborator, and inspirational motivator. Mixed bag. There's some that certainly strongly, a few, maybe it's disagree, strongly disagree. And you can go down the line here. The board chair seeks to build consensus amongst the board members and creates a kind of encourage discussion at board meetings. A lot of people agree, but you can see a little bit of disagree here. Same thing here down the lower here. Our organization has a plan to identify and develop the leaders for our organization, the succession planning and everything like that. A little bit of mixed bag. So this goes to show you a snapshot. And we can break it down between, we can tell you leadership and board, but it just gives you a sample of the many, many kind of questions one get. Michelle, next, please. Okay. So one of the things, and before we get this, I want to emphasize this though. I think it's really important to assess the organization. Now, I know it's difficult. And I wrote an article, it's on a website. There's a lot of articles on our website I wrote called The Nonprofit CEO Dilemma. How do I tell my board they're not improving well, but they need improvement? It's very difficult, I get it. But, the concept again is not punishment. The concept is assessment. And if we have to start with ourselves, right? So if we can admit to ourselves that we are open to assessment, and we're open to hear how we can improve, and then the rest of it can come from there. So that's an important concept there. So that's one tool, is to how to assess your organization's performance. It comes with a written report. It's confidential. There's no names involved. Okay. Now, the next thing here is a CEO annual performance evaluation. Now, we can go over here the same type of ways. This is how your board can assess the CEO's performance, his or her, in these particular areas. But I'm going to go over some things that are important for people to know here. So yes, overall organizational performance, strategic relationships, board relations, community relationship, building a brand identity, fiscal stewardship, and cultural philanthropy. It's very important though that we believe that every member of the board, okay, participates in the evaluation. There's too often the evaluation is done solely by the executive committee or done just by the board chair. Now, obviously the board chair is going to have a lot of input because he or she is spending the most time probably with the executive director or CEO, and I use the words interchangeably here. But it's crucial to me that every board member should have a voice to be heard in that process here. So, and the other thing that our tools do, it's easy to administer. I mean, you send it out to the board members, it comes back. You don't have to worry about emails and follow-up reports, everything. So just give us some examples here, Michelle. Same thing here. This is a sample of questions. There's probably over 25 questions at least. But here's the thing: establishes, communicates the organization's vision, and develops an effective strategy for implementation. You've got, again, 2/3 saying I agree, and I strongly agree, and you got 1/3 of saying I disagree. Here's one, we just put out samples of questions here. Works with the governance committee, and I can explain a little bit what that is, to ensure the board is effectively engaging, recruiting, and educating members of the board for carrying out the responsibilities. Half the respondents say that don't agree. Now, just briefly, without going into detail, a governance committee is probably, to me, the most important committee of a board of directors or trustees. I use the words interchangeably. It used to be called the nominating committee, and then it got involved besides nominating, but board education, board development, it became board development, got confused with fundraising and development. So the term that most people use today is a governance committee. It has no power to itself. There's a lot of information on our website. I'm happy to get all that to you for free. But this gives us one snapshot that says, and actually this is a true actual sample of a real CEO evaluation, this one, who has done a fabulous job, but this was one area that had to be focused on. Next, Michelle. Just a couple more here. Look, serves as an effective spokesperson, represents the community. A little bit of mixed bag. Some people say yes, but you still got almost 40% of people saying I disagree or I don't know. Same thing down below, develops a positive brand identity that motivates an entire staff, board, volunteers, the donors to feel pride in the organization. That's an important way to evaluate people, and that gives feedback. And here again, you got, certainly a number of people say I don't know, but some people strongly disagree. Now, here's the thing on the bottom. That's just another real life example, has implemented a culture of philanthropy where the board, CEO, and the chief development officer work clearly together in helping raise money. You got half the board says I agree and half the board disagrees. So that by itself is worth 1,000. That snapshot is worth 1,000 awards. This is an example of how a CEO evaluates. Next slide, Michelle. Now, before we get to that, I want to say something else here. We do believe that in addition to a board having a CEO evaluation, which we have, we provide a CEO self-evaluation, and as we do for other leaders here. I think it's very important for not only a board to evaluate the CEO, but it's very important for the CEO, and again, I say executive director, to evaluate themselves, because a couple of things. I'm sure many of you have seen this, but I've seen this where I've seen an executive be very hard on themselves and realize, you're hard on yourself, and yet everybody else feels that you're doing a really good job. So you need to hear that you're doing a good job. But on the other hand, I've seen people feel that I'm terrific. I'm Wonder Boy, Wonder Woman of the world, and you realize that's not true. So I think a self-evaluation is very important, and we offer that as well here. This is a similar thing, is that this is what a CEO or executive director can do for all of his or her direct reports. It recognizes how well someone is doing in their job, which is important. It identifies areas of needed improvement. And by the way, in both the evaluation tools, there's areas, as there is in the Executive Leadership Board Assessment tool, there are areas where you can write in comments, and the written comments get reported into the report without anybody's name on it, of course, okay? Again, it's very important to establish goals and expectations up front. It's not fair to evaluate somebody, whoever you are, evaluate someone and say, yeah, you didn't really do this well, but you didn't tell me that's what I was supposed to do. That's not fair. It should be agreed upon up front. And when the evaluation is done for this current year, that's the time you want to mutually agreed upon setting goals for next year. And so again, it involves a self-evaluation and establish agreed upon goals for the coming year. So, and pretty much same questions. Next, Michelle. Next. Okay. So those are the board assessment and leadership assessment, anonymous, CEO investment tool, self-evaluation, executive team self-evaluation. The next tool I want to talk about is the 360 leadership development system. A 360 development system, if you ever used one or heard of it, it measures how people perceive you. Now, you could do very well in an evaluation because you can meet your goals, you could exceed your goals, but we find out that there are people are feeling that you're not making them warm and fuzzy, you're not listening, you're not caring about them, you don't treat people well, you don't communicate regularly, whatever. So we believe in it's an important tool, and we think it's great to have when one is having your annual evaluation of whatever position you're at. It's ideal to have a 360 evaluation of time measured perception. So what is this? It's a non-threatening way to identify performance perception by your peers. If your CEOs are going to be by your board, if it's your board chair, it's going to be by your board and executive team. If you're a vice president, it's going to be by your peers and supervisors. It's usually anywhere from 8 to 15 people on average is kind of where it is at. And again, it's anonymous. You don't know the person that's giving you that feedback. It's important here. And feedback is honest and open. And I can tell you, everybody, I know a lot of you that are on participating today. the way I learned to change my life was people gave me feedback, and I needed it. I needed a lot of feedback as a kid. I needed a lot of feedback as an adult, and my wife's been giving me positive feedback or feedback to grow for 41 years. So feedback is a positive thing. Okay. It encourages forward-thinking leadership. At the end of the day, we're only as good, are we not, of the people that we have on our team. So it provides clear, though, an actual plan for improvement. Our 360 tool, and which is beyond affordable, helps have a plan of improvement here. At the end of the day, it promotes career growth, enables leaders to become more effective, efficient, and valuable to the organization. But I want to spend some time going over the specifics of this kind of a 360 tool, Michelle. Okay. In our 360 leadership assessment tool, and it's a lot of, I'm not going to get into all the details, but it really covers 17 different skills on assessments. It's going to give perceptions about communication. How well do you listen to others? Do you process information well? Do you communicate effectively? Teamwork. Do you manage the team? Do you create synergy? Do you facilitate team success? Or it's all about you? Do you recognize employees? Do you address employee needs? Do employees feel cared for? One of the things that I learned a long time ago, and early in my career, was I had a professor at grad school who said to us about, I spent 25 years in the medical world as a CEO of 2 major medical centers and a corporate executive serving hospitals and healthcare systems around the country. But he told me and told everybody, every once in a while, put your business plans and your budgets and your agreements, put it away and kind of walk around the hospital. And he actually said, walk down the emergency room, remind yourself why you're there. And I remember, walking around the hospital and off-campus buildings. And at the beginning, people felt, oh my God, he's here. We did something wrong here. But it's really, really important to kind of, out there and hear what the employees have to say. Do you take initiative? Do you work independently? Or are you a decision maker? I mean, how many of you how many of you had a boss that just can't make a decision? They need to form a committee. Do you use good judgment? So on and on. Do you establish trust, provide direction, delegate responsibility? Are you pursuing objectives? So this is a way, again, this is measuring your perception. This is not saying how you've done. That's done in an annual evaluation. But this is helping you. The question comes up, will we have access to the slides? The answer is yes, you're going to have access to all the slides, all the recording, and more. We'll get that at the beginning. So you're going to have everything for this. So 360 evaluation is just, to me, it's vital to grow here. And I'll be honest with you. I in my early days as an early consultant, before I, became a hospital CEO, I had a supervisor tell me, Dennis, you're really smart and bright, but you're really not much. You're not a team player. And it was honest. I was very ambitious, and I realized I had to be a team player, even if I didn't like my team members. Sometimes I had to find a way to work with them, and so, and without getting into my life story, my book, Mopping Towards the CEO, which is a whole other thing here. So this is that. So Michelle, can we move on to the next one, please? The fifth assessment tool we use is called the DCM Leadership Assessment. It's actually, we partner with a firm called Telexis MX Assessment. It measures how one is wired, measures your DNA. It measures your personality and leadership traits, your professional interests, your cognitive abilities. It gives you insight how likely you will be to interact with members of your team. And it's extremely helpful, and I'll explain how we use it, extremely helpful when considering both hiring, but when you're considering upper level roles and promotions. But it's important to understand it's a tool and it has its limitations. I want to go over it right now. This is an actual sample. Sarah's sample. Hello, Sarah. Thank you for allowing to use it. Michelle, go on. Now, for each major position, there are certain success factors that we can help you can create here. In this case here, this is a sample report. It's a little bit lengthy. In this case here, Sarah has a job match of 89%. Now, that's good, but I'm going to tell you this. I've had CEOs in our search business that we've placed with a 76%, and we've had people that are 99% job match that don't become a final candidate for other factors here. So just gives it. So this just lays out a report, and let's move on and show you some of the details of this assessment report. Okay. So it gives, first of all, just gives a summary of how our reasoning it is. Just it gives you a lot of details, and we're going to go through some of these quickly because again, we had to put these each of the report on a slide here. But here's the crux of the matter here. It'll provide a score, okay, and the highest score doesn't win, and the lowest score doesn't lose. I want to make this point here. But here's a case that on the scale of, that the average is 5, 6, 7. In this case, this sample, Sarah sample, had a 6 of manageability. People contact a 5, attitude will get to a 3. Very low score on competitiveness. If you saw my report, my competitiveness, I'm off to the chart to the right. High sense of urgency, which can sound great, but I'm going to tell you about the limitations of that. And take charge is high, and that sounds like it's great, but also got limitations. So I'm going to explain each one as we get through here. Measurement show that. Okay. So here's an example, take charge. Now, you can say, well, I need someone to come into my organization and take charge. However, this case, it says that Sarah may be reluctant to follow the direction of others as she refers to act as a leader. Now, has a strong need to be the leader in most situations, and may be forceful, which is fine, and may be very comfortable in being assertive. But at the same time, I'd like to see people who empower others. So because you have a high score of take charge, it sounds good, but it could be that you're also not. So it just gives you some things here. Now, here's an example, though. If you had this assessment tool and you were interviewing Sarah, it gives you a couple of questions you could ask her, and I'm using this here. So tell me about a situation when you had to defend a decision you made, even though it was unpopular at the moment in your organization. Has there been a time when you were speaking about your ideas and you got into trouble? What happened as a result of it? Can you tell me a situation in which you had to remain silent about a problem, even though you believed you had a better solution? So this is just a tool here. Let's go on to another one. Same thing, here's competitiveness here. Now, obviously, it's a low score of competitiveness, which is not a bad thing. But it says, in the interest of preserving, sort of harmonious atmosphere, she may need to be able to, listen to the opinions of others. Consistently tries to avoid conflict. So conflict avoidance, that's 90% of the world tries to avoid conflict. We get that. Prefers not to act against the group, and she may be frequently defer to others, not a problem. But again, these are just some questions. So Sarah, tell me about a time that you withheld your opinion in order to maintain congenial environment. And you have a conversation. So she answers the question. Can you tell me when someone you met took advantage of you, anything like that here? So that's just an example. And last one here, this can describe your willingness any to let someone win an argument in order to avoid conflict. So just highlight some things here. Now, let's go to another one here. Here's one that's very important. I see this a lot, sense of urgency. So it says, wow, this is what I need. I need someone come into the organization, or someone in the organization, we're going to promote a strong sense of urgency. But you can have a strong sense of urgency and be not paying attention to accuracy and precision. You can have someone with a lower score and sense of urgency. So why? I need someone to get this thing done tomorrow. But you just need to ask questions, because sometimes it's nothing wrong with having a high sense of urgency, but you want to find out how focused on accuracy and precision they are. Where I've seen a lot of people that have, a 4 or 5 easily on a sense of urgency, but they just focus on accuracy and precision. They take a little more time here. So you look at the management insights on the bottom. Each report for each section gives a report. It says Sarah may become frustrated if her colleagues don't share her high sense of urgency. All right. May become impatient if the work pace decreases. She likes a fast pace of working here. May push colleagues to work at a faster pace. That could be good. Maybe that's needed. And there's, again, various questions you can add to people here. Next one, Michelle. Same thing. This is fine. Reasoning ability is, it's a pretty good score here. Nothing to be concerned about. And there's a question you might ask it. How would you ensure that you gain, training programs and whether they're easy or difficult? How would you measure that? How do you ensure that? Little things like that. No big deal. What's the next one here? Attitude. Well, obviously, attitude is very important here. And so, here's questions. If you would ask her, can you describe some situation accurately for high level skepticism? How do you express doubt, misgivings, or tact? Is there, Michelle, do we have any of the bottom management insights for attitude, or is that okay? So manageability, we went over this one. This is fine. Let's move on to the next slide here. People contact. Now, this is an important one too. I know someone very well. I'm laughing, but I know someone very well that in all social engagements will be very social, very engaging in conversation. In the workplace is highly engaging, viewed very favorably by everybody in the workplace. But the reality, this person would rather be, the way they're wired, they'd rather be home alone, watching TV or reading a book. So they have to spend a lot of energy to be involved with people. They're introverted. Nothing wrong with that. So what I'm getting at with these tools here, it's just saying how you are wired. It's saying how your DNA is. How it doesn't mean that for the person I just referred to, they have to spend a lot of energy getting outside themselves and engaging people in a conversation. They do extremely well, but it's not how they're wired. Where I'm the opposite. I'm an extrovert. I'm out there all the time talking to people. I'm very comfortable about it. I do like my downtime. So these type of assessment tools provide insights at how one is wired. It does not necessarily address how someone performs. So it just gives you some insights. So the difference between you had the 360 evaluation, which measures perceptions, how people are perceiving you in a wide range of 17 characteristics, versus the telesure is we use this actually in our search practice, where the final candidates, we don't do this in the beginning, but the final maybe 3 or 4 candidates will do the assessment. And it helps the search committee or the organization just ask some questions here. It just gets it. And most times it's very effective. There are times though, when I won't get specifics, but I recall interviewing someone to be a COO for a major organization. And I'm very impressed with their background, very impressed with their interview. But their assessment tool came back with a lot of red flags. And so it's just a tool you have, because guess what? Without an assessment tool like this, you'll find out 6 months, 2 years, 3 years down the road, and then you're going to find out you made the wrong hire or you made the wrong promotion. So these are just tools to have here. Okay, what do we got next, Michelle? Okay. There's sometimes there's areas of concern, but this one says, is it okay to get around the rules? It's never okay to get around the rules. What else we have here, Michelle? Okay. So I'm going to be taking questions. I'll talk next here, but just want to get it in. So one of the things that we do, and this is not shown here today, but we'll email it to you and everything, and it's in our on our website. Besides the assessment tools, the Executive Leadership and Board Governance online assessment tool, the Executive Evaluation tool, the CO Evaluation tool, the 360 tool, and the MX, their fees range between $250 to no more than $975. When someone buys 2 together, there's a discount, and you'll get this lead this year. So, example, if someone wanted to buy just one, the Executive Leadership Board Governance Assessment Tool, if your board is 25 people and 10 people in leadership, it's only going to cost you $975, and it includes an hour of consultation. If you decide you wanted to get the both the executive leadership assessment and you wanted to do the CO evaluation tool, you can get them, and then you get a $500 discount for $1,400, but it comes with 4 hours of consultation by me or one of the people on my team. And the goal is 8 hours of consultation, and it's extremely affordable. What we didn't present today, just for time purposes, that is we have two really excellent online courses that you'll receive information for. One is an online course is how to become a high-performing nonprofit executive leadership team. It also goes for $975. It's take it online. You can do it in your home, in your office, on your mobile app. It comes with a course handbook. It has 9 different modules. The whole course itself is an hour, but it's a year license. So we have a lot of organizations that use it as a management tool to say, okay, at our December 15th management meeting, whether it's an executive team of 8 or 100 people or 50 people, we're going to be talking about obviously collaboration. So we're going to make sure you read modules, 4 or 5, whatever it is here. We have a similar course with 8 modules called How to Become a High-Performing Nonprofit Board. And the same thing, it's a year license and you can have up to 25 people. So by itself is $975, and that means it's $39 per board member for an entire year of training here. So there's a whole mixture here. So my point of here, and we're going to take questions now, is the challenges and the opportunities are great. We've all have been through a horrible 20 months of extremely unmanageable times. We're still going through it. But this has always been about those we serve. All of you, I congratulate everyone. I mean this sincerely. All of you work to help someone else's life out. That's a noble cause, amazing. And I've dedicated my life over the past 20 years to do this as well, besides my career in the medical world. But it's important to know where you stand and have the idea to assess and evaluate. And it's the way of growing. There is going to be resistance. You're going to have resistance. It's like, well, how do I tell my board? How do I tell my team I want to assess it? It takes courage. It's not easy. So I'm going to take questions. I'm also going to, before we leave here, we do have another webinar next week, but this is what an offer I make for everybody. If anybody that's registered for the call wants to have a free 30-minute consultation with me on any of the topics here, we'll get it out and you'll send me an email, dennis@dcm-associates.com. It'll go out in email. Free. If you want to have 2 people on the call, 3 people on the call, 5 people on the call, it's just yourself, it's fine. And I'm happy to do this. I love to give my time here. And so we got, let's get to some of the questions here. Michelle, I'm going to ask you if you can help, go with some of these questions here for me.
Okay, you got it. I've had a few questions coming to me privately. One question is, with all of the different tools that you've suggested, how would an organization determine the appropriate starting point? Which tool, when, and how?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the answer is what one perceives as the best need they have at the time. I do believe whether we do board retreats or organizational stuff, I think the executive leadership board governance is probably number one. I think because you get everybody's involved and everybody can see the answers and everybody can have discussion. And for $975, you're going to get a chance to have the scene confidentially. So to me, that's crucial. I think the annual evaluations of each person combined with a 360 is dynamite. And I'm going to even explain those scores. At 360 evaluation, we charge, if you want 8 people to be part of that 360, it's only $350. And it includes, and then we charge, if it's 15 people, $500. Now, you can hire us if you want to do coaching and added stuff here, but I made sure that every one of our services is affordable. And so, but I think the executive leadership board governance is the best place to start. I think adding a 360 to an annual evaluation is the next step here.
Dennis, can you talk about what, with each of these evaluations, like when the the results are in, what happens? Do they get a
Yeah.
report? Do they,
Yeah.
what do they get?
Yeah. The answer is yes. Everybody gets a written report. So let's talk about the Executive Leadership Board Governance Tool, and then we'll go down the road here. You get a written summary report from me or from our organization, highlighting your identifies how many board members and how many leaders participated, does not by name. It identifies the strengths that were indicated through the, it identifies the steps in the process here. You get a written report of recommendations of things that we think you want to focus in on. It also includes an hour consultation, usually with the board chair and CEO. And someone just asked a question here. If you've had board members leave recently and you wanted their opinion, you can get their opinion. We won't know the difference between those who left or those that they're here, but that's an important tool here. So that comes with a written report. On the executive leadership and the leadership team annual evaluation report, that also comes with a written report. Again, it highlights the strengths, which I think is important, highlights identified areas of improvement. It encourages discussion between, if you're to talk about the CEO, executive, between your board and you. It should be a conversation. And if you're the board member, you should have a conversation with just, saying, hey, Sarah, you're using Sarah. First of all, I'm going to tell you, you've done a fabulous job, really difficult challenge this year. You've done a great job. That's how I feel. That's how the board feels. But there's two things we just want that you can probably do better on, and we want to help you with it. So here's two things. That's how the tool works. So, but they're all reports. The Telesure, report is also, it comes out a report, and it's an individual report, and it goes to both the depends who's in our case, it does not go out to the candidate, it goes out to the board member of the search committee. But if you're using it for one of your people, it'll go out to you, and then you can share it with that person, the assessment report. On the, Michelle, you might be better off, but on the 360, it goes out to both the, it goes out to the person who's the center of the conversation. It does not, if I recall, Michelle, help me out here. It does not mention names again here. And
no,
but
no. And in fact, when we set up a 360 assessment, it's survey respondents are grouped into categories such as boss, peer, direct report, but you have to have multiple people. You can't have just one person in a category, because then you lose the anonymous nature of it. So it has to be that you have to have two, preferably 3 or 4 in most of the categories, so that people need to feel comfortable answering honestly, and it gives a better perspective of the responses in full.
there was a question I've seen too. Let me ask you a question. So what's the steps in reestablishing a board that is member believing? There's a challenge here. I think what I would do, and this is like, Jessica, I think I'd have if I was a CEO, I would have a board member talk to the board member that left, and find out why they have left, and then share that information with whoever needs to be known as here. They're clearly, I wrote an article years ago and about how to deal with difficult board members. And in the course, I have that here. And my recommendation is, in spite of what you think as a CEO, executive director, I would, if you have a board member misbehaving or a lot of different reasons, whatever, morale, constantly negative, whatever, I would not get involved in that. I'd have a board member get involved in that, and someone maybe they trust and respect, and sometimes just bringing something to somebody's attention that, hey, you're not listening, you're not coming to meetings, it's fine. I would let the board evaluate the board. That's my position on it. Another question from Lisa is, how does she find the balance between conflicting interests of their performance? Well, that's a great question. How do you do it? Here's what I believe is that if you're the CEO, your perception matters the most. If now, here's something that's important here. If I'm evaluating you and you think you're doing a good job, and I don't think you're doing a good job, well, I'm gonna. It's my vote that counts here. Now, here's the difference, though. If I find out that you do a 360, and all of your peers and colleagues that work, people you work with, and people that work for you, all feel you really are a good communicator, then maybe it's my problem. But the fact they had a situation not that long ago. I mean, the past month, I won't say where and what part of the country we work nationally, where a CEO pretty much told the board, I'm doing a good job, mind your own business. And I mean, it's like the kiss of death here. So I think, I know this in my life, if my wife says, sit down, I got to tell you something. I mean, her opinion counts more than mine. Been married 41 years, thank God, to a wonderful woman, and she keeps me on the guardrails here. I hope that answered that question here. Anything else here? We got Michelle.
Did you answer the question about how a CEO finds the balance between conflicting perceptions? So I like what I hear in this question is, you've got very different perceptions among your people about how you're doing. Is there any thoughts you have about that?
I think it's that. Here's what it comes down to. Listen, there are people, when I mention leadership, by the way, leadership to me is not just the executive team, it's everybody in the organization that's responsible for programs leadership. But at some point in time, there needs to be authority. And so, people need to get feedback. And feedback is very important. When I wrote my first book, and my joke, if everybody's seen me speak around the country or heard me in other webinars or whatever, my joke was always, if Mrs. Fritz, my 7th grade English teacher, knew I wrote 2 sentences together, she'd have a heart attack. I was not a very good student for a lot of reasons. If she knew I wrote 5 books, she'd have a triple heart attack, and she couldn't believe it here. But my first book is called A Guide to Achieving New Heights, the 4 Pillars of Successful Nonprofit Leadership. And the first one, to me, is relationship building. I've seen so many CEOs that are not successful because they do not know how to earn trust and respect and build a relationship to make people feel better about themselves and heard and listened to and cared for. And so it is important for feedback and team members. And it's your job as an executive to let other people know how they're impacting others in the organization. The biggest reason why people leave an organization, there's 2 major reasons, and it's not the 3, it's 2. The number 1 reason people leave an organization, they don't feel they have an opportunity to move up. That's a whole nother discussion and workshop we do. And they don't like the people that work with, or they can't stand the boss. Money's the 3rd reason. It's not the 1st. So I just think that, I hope that answered that question there. Again, the focus of what I want to do today is make sure that everybody just think and come away with the idea of assessment and evaluation. Assessment and evaluation is a word, not for punishment, not for demeaning, but assessment. And at the end of the day, if we really believe in our mission, if we really believe in helping those we serve, that's how we're going to do it. So if there's no other questions right now, I thank you. Michelle will follow up with all of you. You'll get a copy of the recording. You're going to get information about our brochures and our products and our search business. There's a ton of free information on our website. Dennis or DCM-associates.com, DCM- or -associates. There's tons of free information, articles, webinars, previous ones. You're going to get a recording of this. And again, anybody that likes a free 30-minute consultation with me, just email me, and I'm happy to work it out with you. happy to it. And I just wish all, thank you all very much. But this is the 4th of a 5th. We have another one coming up. If you missed the previous 3, Michelle, find a way. I guess we can get the recordings out to them as well.
Absolutely. At the after next week's session, I'll send around the recording to every session so that every topic we've covered will be available to you.
I thank you all very much. Have a great day, and peace, love, and continued success in all the great work you do around the country. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.